Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 5090 O-level biology new syllabus, specimen paper 2. This is the second video which is going to explain to you question 5, 6, 7 and 8. In the previous video, video 1, I have given you the rest of the first 4 questions. Now let's start with question number 5. Compare each of the following processes: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Now you know that what is respiration? Respiration is the release of energy from glucose, and one requires oxygen, one does not require oxygen. So aerobic and anaerobic respiration, they have asked you to compare. Compare means similarities and differences. So you have to give me the similarity, which is glucose is used in both, and then you have to give me differences. Differences are what? Differences are when one oxygen is needed, the other oxygen is not needed. The amount of energy, more energy is released in aerobic respiration and less energy is released in anaerobic respiration. So what you could do is you could even do a table like this, draw a line here and write aerobic and write anaerobic. I would do that if I was in your place. So glucose used in both. There's no thing that you can't draw a line between them when you're doing comparison. Oxygen, no oxygen, more energy, less energy. Now you got your 3 out of 3. So, and the other which you could have given was incomplete breakdown of glucose. Here there is incomplete. Here there is complete breakdown of oxygen. So complete breakdown of oxygen of glucose, sorry. So complete breakdown of glucose and incomplete. Why? Because there's still energy left, whatever is made. If in yeast is ethanol, still energy is there. If it's human beings, it's lactate, still a lot of energy is available in that. Then coming on to the B part of the question, they've asked you anaerobic respiration in muscles and anaerobic respiration in yeast. Now the B part asks you a comparison of anaerobic respiration in muscles and yeast. So I would do a column like this, or you can even do it the other way around, whichever you like. Glucose in both. And what is going to happen in yeast? Lactic, here in muscles, lactic acid will be produced. While in this thing, in yeast, carbon dioxide and ethanol will be produced. So, well, of course, this could get you 2 marks. And this was a 3-mark question. So 1 mark is for glucose required for both. The other mark is for lactic acid. And the 3rd mark is for carbon dioxide. The 4th mark is for ethanol. And of course, you could have also said in muscles, of course, this is because of an oxygen debt. Now part C says compare photosynthesis and phototropism, because you see in the initial question it was compare. So compare means similarities and differences. So let's look at the similarities in this. Now the similarities are very obvious. Both occur in plants. Photosynthesis occurs in plants and phototropism occurs in plants. So please remember, phototropism is new to the syllabus. We did not have it in the previous syllabus, and both of these require light. So both of these require light. Now let's look at the differences. Now the differences are very obvious. For photosynthesis you need chlorophyll, produces sugar or glucose. In phototropism a chemical called auxin is produced and it results in growth towards light or away from light. So in the roots it's away from light, in the stem it's towards light. So differences would be chlorophyll in photosynthesis produces glucose, so 1 mark, 2 marks. And phototropism, auxin is produced, and it results in different parts of the plant responding differently. Some respond by growing towards light, some respond by growing away from light. Now coming to question number 6, the statements E to K relate the process of reproduction. E produces genetically identical offsprings, produces more individuals of the same species, always involves only one parent, involves fusion of nuclei, requires gametes, forms a diploid zygote, involves only cell division by mitosis. Table 6.1 shows a comparison of sexual and asexual reproduction. Complete table 6.1 by writing each letter in the correct box to match it for sexual reproduction only, asexual reproduction only, or to both. The first letter has been written in the correct box for you. Use each letter once only. So you have got to understand is that this is for 6 marks, so there are going to be 6 correct answers to this. So this is how. So sexual reproduction only will be what? Sexual reproduction only will be H, I, and J. So for sexual reproduction, we will write H, I, and J. Now for asexual reproduction, what will be the answers? E is being written for you. So E is done for you, so we can't write that again. Now what are the? For asexual E, E, G always involves only one parent, and K involves only cell division. There is no meiosis in asexual reproduction. So we can understand asexual reproduction will be E, of course, is written, so it will be G and K. So we've done 5. Now for both sexual and asexual reproduction, it will be what? It will be F. It will be F, produces more individuals of the same species. So because in sexual and asexual reproduction, it is more individuals of the same species. Like if we have cuttings of sugar cane, so more sugar cane, that is asexual reproduction. But if we have flowers, rose bush flowers, more rose bushes. So produces more individuals of the same species. Now coming to question number 7, organisms can be classified into groups by the features they share. Now this is again new to the syllabus, so this is the only question we have which we refer to. State 2 features used to classify humans as mammals. So mammals, what do they have? They have hair or fur, 1 mark, warm-blooded, 2nd mark, 4-chambered heart. They have a diaphragm, they have mammary glands, they have a single bone lower jaw, and they have a one-time tooth replacement and 3 bones in the middle ear. Out of all these, you could have written any 2. I'm not saying you have to write all these, so you could have written any 2 out of these. You can see all the points here, or if you said fur, then warm-blooded and 4-chambered heart, then diaphragm, then young fed on milk, or the fact that they have mammary glands. M-A-M-M-A-R-Y. Mammary glands are the milk-producing glands. Mammary glands, or you had a single boned lower jaw, one-time tooth replacement, we lose our teeth, the milk teeth, and then we get the permanent teeth, and 3 bones in the middle ear. That's very typical of all mammals. But any 2 of these, I mean, you don't have to know all of these, you just have to know 2 of these. Then coming to the B part of the question, the scientific name for humans is Homo sapiens, H is with a capital. State the level of classification referred to by each part of the scientific name. So Homo means it is the genus, and sapiens means it is a species. This is again a point of the syllabus which they are examining. So genus and species, you have to know this. This is, I mean, all rote learning. Then it says humans may be infected with pathogens such as viruses. State the 2 main features of a virus. Now the main features of a virus is, number 1, it has to have a protein coat. And it doesn't have a cell membrane or a cell wall or any outer boundary, it has the protein coat. And the second thing is it has to have some genetic material. And this genetic material, if you didn't know the name, well, fine, you could have just said genetic material, or you could have said DNA, or you could have said RNA. So it's not DNA and RNA, it's DNA or RNA. The genetic material can be DNA or RNA. So 1 mark for this and 1 mark for writing this. genetic material can be DNA or RNA, or even if you just said genetic material, but you got your 2 marks. So it was an easy question. Then coming to part D of the question 7, figure 7.1 shows a sample of human blood as seen under the microscope. Again, if you remember the syllabus, micrographs, you've got to know the cells as look under the micrograph. In figure 7.1, cell is labeled X. Cells of this type produce antibodies. So they've given you this information that they produce antibodies. Outline how this type of cell labeled X defends the body against infection by a pathogen. Pathogen are disease-causing microorganisms. So how does a lymphocyte, now you got to understand is, number one, this is a lymphocyte. So you got a mark for that if you said lymphocyte, because they've said they haven't named the cell and they said produce antibodies. So lymphocytes this is active immunity. This is of course a new chapter of the syllabus, active immunity. What does it do? It detects antigens. Antigens are surface markings on pathogens. So antigens are present on pathogens. I always say it's like your face ID, and you open your phone with that. And so similarly, every pathogen has, like if there's a virus like this is the antigen on it. Then there's another virus which has this antigen on it. Then there's another virus which has this antigen. So everybody has different surface features, like everybody's face ID is different. So different viruses, different bacteria have different antigens on their surface. So antibodies bind to antigens. Now what is going to happen is we're going to have an antibody binding to this antigen, and this would be the antibody. And who and where is it produced, or which cell produces it? It's the lymphocyte that produces it. So antibodies bind to pathogen, and the binding then leads to phagocytosis, and the phagocyte then engulfs it and destroys it. So antibody leading to phagocytosis, and the shape of the antigen is complementary to the antibody. So this antibody is complementary to this antigen. So every virus will have different antigens, and so that is why we give you the COVID vaccination, because the antibodies will be complementary to the COVID virus, or the COVID-19 virus, which is very prevalent these days. So just a quick recap of it. Lymphocytes, active immunity, detects antigens, antigens on pathogens, antibodies bind to pathogen. This leads to phagocytosis, and shape of antibody is specific to every virus, and it is complementary to the antibody. Of course, you can say that as well. Now coming to the next part of the question. Infection causes the type of cell labeled X to produce antibodies. State one other cause of antibody production, and this could be, of course, vaccination. You could have said vaccination, or you could have said injects weakened pathogen. Injects weakened pathogen. In polio virus, we give you these polio drops. Well, we give you the weakened virus so that your lymphocytes think it's the real live virus and they make antibodies against it. But when the live virus enters your body, you already have the antibodies. So you will not get the disease polio. Polio is a very bad disease because it destroys the motor neurons of the spinal cord. And people who have had polio will be having a disability for the rest of their life. So they will limp, and we can't do much because the motor neuron is destroyed. And we cannot regenerate neurons. Neurons do not repair. So this person has to live with this disability. So we are trying to prevent disability in the human population. Physical disability. Of course, we still have a lot of mental disabilities, which are increasing day by day. Now, coming to the last question, explain the concept of control by negative feedback. And the B part said, describe how two named components of the skin are involved in regulating body temperature in hot conditions. So you enter this room is very hot, what is going to happen? But the first part of the question is, explain the concept of control by negative feedback. Now, negative feedback, you can give quite a few examples. Let's now stick to the example of the skin. The room is very hot, what is going to happen? That is, of course, in part B, but explain the concept of negative feedback. So in negative feedback, the basic thing is there is a normal thing, like there's a normal blood glucose level, 80 to 120. Now you eat a few sweet things like you eat gulab jamun or chocolates or maybe ice cream. Now after some time, when it's digested and absorbed, your blood glucose level rises. Now it is detected, and then your body responds to it. So first of all, there is a normal parameter. There's a change in that normal parameter. Then it is detected somewhere in the body. This blood glucose concentration, if the blood becomes concentrated and there's less water, then it will be detected in the hypothalamus. But at times the blood glucose level is also detected in the pancreas. And then the body responds to it. So the pancreas releases insulin, doesn't produce insulin, releases insulin. The insulin has already been stored there. So it releases insulin. The insulin is carried to the liver, and it results in the glycogen being converted to glucose. So basic concept of negative feedback is, number one, there's a normal parameter, there's a change, it is detected somewhere, and then there's a response to it. Maybe it's a coordinator or the brain or the hypothalamus, and that results in a response, which is also called a corrective mechanism, and that correction returns the parameter to the normal set point. So negative feedback. Now, as you can see here, I've given it to you in writing. How would you write it? Many of you sometimes say, okay, Miss Par, we know it, but we don't know how to write it. So let's talk about a condition like blood glucose, or you can even say temperature. So there's a change from the normal. You eat something sweet, you've had ice cream, your blood glucose level is going to rise. It is detected because too much sugar in the blood, too much glucose in the blood is going to make it very concentrated. So it's going to be detected somewhere in the body. It could be detected in the hypothalamus. So then it is going to be a communication. So it's going to circulate in the blood, or it is going to be a nerve impulse, or some way it is going to be communicated to the coordinator. So the control center or the hypothalamus or the brain is also the coordinator. So hypothalamus, brain, coordinator, control center, any of these words you can use here. This will result in a corrective mechanism or a response. And then something will happen, like in blood glucose, insulin is released and it will correct the increase in blood glucose level, and that glucose will be converted to glycogen in the liver. So there will be a correction in that level of blood glucose. There will be a correction in something else, like if your temperature, you enter this room is very hot, and your temperature increases a little even, then something is going to happen. You're going to sweat or something, and then the body temperature or the blood temperature will return to normal. So you had to give me all these points to get 4 out of 4. I didn't say all these points, sorry, any 4 out of these. But you have to understand negative feedback. This helps you to understand the whole process or the whole concept of negative feedback. Now, as you look at this question, an important thing which students will not see and not read correctly is describe how two named components of the skin are involved in regulating body temperature in hot conditions. Now, the two named ones, you should have mentioned either the nerve endings, which are the receptors, or you should have talked about the blood vessels, or you should have talked of the sweat glands, or of the hair. And out of these four which I have named, nerve endings, blood vessels, sweat gland, and hair, any two should have been named. So now let's look at it. Let's look at it a little more clearly. Now let's talk the first thing of nerve endings. Now the nerve endings, what nerve endings are we talking about? When you enter this room is very hot. There are receptors in your skin. Your eyes don't detect this temperature. You enter this room and said, oh my God, this room is very hot. Let's put the fan on, or let's put the AC on, or something like that. But how did you come to know this room is very hot? You've got receptors in the skin. They detect the change or the increase in temperature. You enter this room and you say, oh, this room is very cold. Well, how did you come to know? Your eyes didn't see this. Your ears didn't figure it out. So what has figured it out are the receptors in the skin. And you say, oh my God, this room is very hot. And all this information goes to the brain. Now, the brain sends impulses. You know, motor neurons carry impulses to either muscles or glands. So there are muscles in the wall of the blood vessels. So the nerve endings go to the muscles in the wall of the blood vessels, and the blood vessels dilate, vasodilation. So more blood is circulating in the surface of the skin and more blood in the capillaries, so more heat lost. So increased heat loss because of the skin now suddenly having more blood flowing in the skin, and an average person's skin is about 3 meter square area. So you understand how this concept will have to be very clearly written. Then the brain will also send impulses to the sweat glands, and the sweat glands will start to produce more sweat. That's an active process actually. To take out water, salts, and the urea sort of accompanies it, and this sweat glands have to do this as an active process. It requires energy, requires ATP. And then this sweat, which is water, salts, and urea, is taken to the surface of the skin. And when this sweat evaporates, it is going to cool you down. When this sweat evaporates, it is going to cool you down. And the next, of course, is the hair. Hair becomes lower. Naturally, this is, of course, doesn't happen so much in humans, but less air will be trapped, so loss of insulation will occur. Now, as you look at the answer said that describe two named components. Now, the nerve endings, when you talked about that, you talked of the receptors which detect. Then they detect what? They increase in temperature because it said hot conditions. It said in the question that. And then this generates impulses to the brain. Then if the next heading, these are the different headings I'm giving you. The next heading, if you said blood vessels, because blood vessels have a very important role to play in temperature regulation. So what will happen to the blood vessels? As I just told you earlier, that the brain will send impulses to the muscles in the wall of the blood vessels, in the arteries and the arterioles, and they will relax. So there'll be vasodilation. How does vasodilation take place? Vasodilation takes place because the blood vessels have muscles in their walls, and these muscles have to have neurons coming from the brain, so these muscles will relax. So the lumen can either become narrower or it can become wider. So these are the muscles in the wall of the blood vessels, in the wall of the arteries, not the capillaries. Please remember, capillaries are only 1 cell thick. So the muscles are only in the wall of the arteries and the arterioles. So blood vessels will dilate, there'll be vasodilation, more blood will be going to the surface of the skin. That's why you look so red in the face. If you're a fair person, you look very red in the face when you've been exercising and you've been on the treadmill or you've been running and you come back home and you're all red in the face and you're sweating. So more blood to the surface of the skin, more blood in the skin capillaries, and heat loss will be increased by radiation because you have so much of your skin is exposed, and that is going to result in more heat loss. Then the third heading could have been sweat glands. So sweat secretion or the release of sweat onto the skin surface, sweat glands will produce sweat. This also will be, the brain will send motor neurons to these sweat glands, impulses to these sweat glands to make more sweat. If it's a cold day, but you're not going to sweat. But if it's a hot day, you're going to sweat. And the brain is going to send impulses to the sweat glands. Okay, now start producing sweat. And then this sweat is transported to the surface of the skin where it's going to evaporate. So evaporation of sweat cools the body down. Then the hair, I don't agree with it, but still I'm telling you what's in the mark scheme. So hair will be lowered, just like if it's a cold day, furry animals look larger because their fur becomes, the hair erector muscle contracts and the hair stands on its ends. So a layer of air is trapped around the body, and that acts as an insulator. That's why you wear, furry coats and very cold weathers. So hair lowered, less air trapped, and loss of insulation. So this was the end of this specimen paper. I hope this is clear to you all, and please do give your comments, and please do let me know. I will of course be doing all the other specimen papers as well. Thank you, and please remember to offer your prayer 5 times. You have to be regular in your prayers if you want Allah's blessings to be bestowed upon you. Be very, very disciplined and make time out for your prayers. I know you all don't have time, but please remember, you must take time out for your prayers and pray regularly. Thank you once again. This is the video 2 on the new syllabus.